and feel very thankful for the experience I had there. And I'm finding it difficult when I'm here to find how frequently negative things are said about the Zen Center. And even the work that's done here, having things structured around not being like the Zen Center, trying to avoid being like the Zen Center, because people have such negative reactions to it, negative memories. I can certainly understand that a lot of people had a lot of experiences there that were harmful to them, and they would rather not be reminded of that, I guess I can understand that. On the other hand, I guess I want to express that it's very hard for me being here and kind of living almost on a daily basis, hearing negative things about something to me that basically I'm very thankful for the training I had at the Zen Center. And Toni mentioned in our staff meeting this week that we may try to arrange the sitting room differently so that it doesn't look so much like the Zen Center Zenville, because people are reminded of that place and have such negative associations to it. And for me, I mean, that's the kind of thing that for me is hard to swallow, because if I'm reminded of the Zen Center, no, I don't feel any reason to wipe out memories of the Zen Center. And it seems to me like the way the sitting room is set up is a pretty good way to sit this many people. And to go to a great deal of effort to try to seat people in a different way in order not to remember the Zen Center. For me, that's hard. It's hard for me to swallow the amount of negative reaction that's this center, particular place.
Do you feel that negative reaction is unjustified? Is that what's difficult about feeling that?
Isn't it unfree, Sally?
Huh?
Isn't it simply unfree, whether it's unjustified or justified? Isn't it simply unfree?
You mean reaction?
Exactly. I mean, one should try, in terms of the sitting room, create a reasonable spatial arrangement to accommodate the people that need to be seated. Odds are it's going to be similar to one sitting room or another in the world. But I don't think we really need to concern ourselves with that. Just create a space that feels good for us.
I wonder where this came from, this concern of Toni's. I don't know. I mean, it's good for us, but who are we? We are a number of individuals, and there might be individuals who are concerned with it and have a strong reaction against this setup. I don't know. I was wondering it too when Toni mentioned, but I didn't ask why.
Well, some of the factors that went into, I think, considering a different arrangement were just sort of factual and not necessarily had to do with the setup at the Zen Center. In terms of these heavy dividers having to be moved, just in terms of, just even right now, as we look around, I mean, it just has a more spacious and different kind of feel to it than just cutting off the room. And if it ends up, and it may end up, that given a certain number of people, that, as John pointed out, dividers have to be a certain way, then it's a factual kind of thing. Then I think maybe it came up also along with that, that walking into this room, wow, this room reminds one of the Zen Center. But I don't think that is necessarily the entire motive for attempting a different arrangement.
That was one of the reasons given. And maybe that's what Marge is responding to, but that was given as a reason. So why should that even be a reason?
I think when I think about one of the things that she mentioned is the frequency where things are related back to the Zen Center and the strength of the negativity. And I think, maybe people just need to look at themselves at that. I mean, how long do people need to hold on to that negativity? And it feels, I feel a little strange sometimes too, because for me, this is a very positive place and this is very positive work, and it always feels a little weird to hear negative things said about, another person or another place.
It seems to me sometimes maybe we have to be clear what's negativity and what's also just clear observation of something that is particularly harmful at any time. I mean, maybe drudging up old memories and stuff, or if they do come up, we need to hold on to them. I mean, I think we all deal where that gets one, but I think it doesn't seem helpful either to get into a feeling of, well, we're all, everything's okay, we're all just really one, and, so I could just be one with what's going on and the problems are solved, whatever insanity is that's going on, but, so maybe just what's negativity?
I'd say something as a current member of the Zen Center, things do change. In my observation, after being there 13 years and looking at the staff, they're all as nice and dedicated as you are now. I don't feel personally, although I felt tremendous tensions in the past with the crowding and the rigidity and all the things I experienced. I'm finding much more congenial as far as the things we've objected to before. And the current staff and Michael Henry brings such a spirit, a wide, open spirit of the ministry. Things are improving, and maybe that's a help to know in some ways.
Yeah, what we're thinking about is 5 years ago.
Exactly, and I felt no differently. Yeah.
It may not be confined to the Zen Center, but it's often astonishing how when there is some very negative feeling expressed, many people seem to absorb that and encourage further statements of negativity about other people.
Better for all of us to be reconcilers.
Well, one wonders why. In the recent past, there have been a couple of experiences where astonishingly negative things have been said, and the person who listened to it seemed to accept it at face value without any question of whether that was accurate or not. No even suggestion that maybe things are not quite that way, or that even if they are, there might be a different response.
You all know that the Zen Center has received a lot of criticism. Past year we've had meetings directing all things that have suffered to the Roshi and to the staff, so things have been considered and looked into too.
Oh, what's his other reaction?
Well, I guess I often get the feeling that people have capsuled and interpreted certain experiences in a particular way, and then their slant on things perhaps is conveyed to someone else and taken as a factual, open, unbiased view. either slightly off-center or it's going to be susceptible to further slanting if it's not already slanted.
But it's very subtle, isn't it, between, maybe that's something that everybody does for themselves, is like, do I have a motive in relating this stuff, or is it just a factual passing on of information that a person may not have had?
Well, maybe in the business I work in, I'm often in the situation of constructing a way of looking at things that are entirely favorable to one side or another. In fact, maybe and it's kind of amazing to me, although having been doing it for years and years, how people will listen to that and swallow a story whole without even the thought that maybe somebody could present an equally plausible way of looking at it and making you feel entirely the opposite to the way they've just been made to feel. And I think that's very true in this situation and in all kinds of situations where people have presented a decidedly, completely plausible, but decidedly favorable view of one way of looking at things. And if you just sort of stop for a second, you might say, no, I wonder if there's another way to see that.
So you're saying that the real danger is that people accept that and also accept it because they're also could be because they're frozen in their memories. You know, I mean, people are duped by words, and the other thing is that it seems like people, because people here have memories of that place that need to be worked through. I mean, that's the other thing probably hasn't been brought up, is that the reason why people say these things is that they still have to work through what went on there for them. I mean, the experience is still very much alive in their minds for whatever reason. It's still there. I mean, in that, I don't see how anyone could just say, well, it's not true that you don't feel that way, you know. But the danger is just blindly going along with it. Other people may reinforce it rather than working through it for yourself.
I think there may be that kind of situation, but I also suspect for many people there are not things that they need to work through in that regard. That maybe it's just a matter of some inattentiveness at the moment. For example, oftentimes if a friend is telling you something and your natural inclination at the moment is to draw them out or to listen to them, to be agreeable, to not interpose objections or to seemingly disrupt the situation. And yet there is a certain disrespect and perhaps harm being done to the person being spoken about who isn't there. And I don't know that that situation is always built on a long pattern of some problem with whatever's being talked about that needs to be worked out. It may simply be a matter of being very narrow at the moment. There may be things to work out in many people's experience, but it seems that over the course of many years, I don't know how many years it's been since there's been sort of a division here.
Well, you
A lot
can't
of that
just
stuff
put it in
didn't-
time. I mean, just saying that it was 3 years, you know.
No, but I think for many people, things have just sort of died away. There really isn't any particular feeling of it. And yet it's still a very convenient thing to allow yourself to fall into.
I think that what I feel is something that, I mean, in my own household, that we talk is there about it, and sometimes I feel bad about, I feel like, why are we dwelling on this? But then sometimes I feel that we talk about it and some things get worked out about the experiences at the Zen Center and all, and also it's a point of discussion like where we want things to change or be different at the Genesee Valley Zen Center. And some of it is reactive and other is just a starting point of discussion. But I think that sometimes it does get into, well, the need for people to have humor at other people's or other organizations' expense. You know,
there's, oh, are they still doing that over there? You know, haven't they seen that, how stupid that is, or, you know. And what's funny is that when you meet someone from the Zen Center from wherever on the street and you just talk to them, it's so irrelevant what you've said about them or the organization in the privacy of your own home. And it's all stupid because you're just meeting a person and it doesn't matter. You know, and that's what's going on. So I think that it can be harmful if you just like kind of use it as a vehicle for your own amusement, almost, which I see happening myself and with other people, that it's a source of amusement now, you know, of comedy. And that I think can be dangerous. It's almost like saying, well, someone's crippled, well, you know, ha ha. You just it is kind of disconcerting.
It also seems like when a group of people get together and start together criticizing, like the Zen Center in this case, it's a real way of building your own group identity, which I don't think serves any real purpose at all for us, except one enormous problem that we'll have to deal with later on. So if we can sort of maybe get glimpses of it just as this beginning, maybe we don't have to do that.
I'm a little concerned because being here too and participating in the day-to-day goings on and conversations around the kitchen table, to use for Marge's response may have been to have seen this thing as negativity, but there are so many different ways, like Nancy was starting to say, that things are talked about, that to kind of like lump it all together and say there's a lot of negativity towards the Zen Center, I think can set up an image about how people here feel about the place, which maybe there is a group dynamic, maybe there's not. I'm not convinced that there is. And maybe we need to be more specific if it's a concern about instances where, yeah, you can get into a riff about da-da-da and making fun of other people. We all do it. I mean, there may be a conversation where factual information is imparted because it's appropriate to possibly go, well, no, that's not how it happened. These were the things that were going on because we were there and lived through a lot of this stuff. And in a way, I think that if that can dispel distortions or illusions, I think that that could be valuable. Often, isn't it the motive? I mean, even amusement, so long as it's not malicious, I mean, I guess the main thing is that, you know, it's not to make, and that's the difficult thing, it's not to make us feel better because we're poking fun at other people. I mean, we poke fun at ourselves too. So I guess I don't know all of the different situations that you're referring to. And I don't think I feel the same way about what happened there as somebody else who lives here. I mean, my own feelings are very strong about what happened there for me. But that may not be the case for somebody else who was never there or had very different experiences. So I wouldn't just like lump it all together.
Well, I think you're entirely right that a lot of the discussions that happen are discussions that help people to understand better what exactly happened there and, you know, helping clarify each other's feelings. I think there can be a lot of positive in that. So I don't mean to put down any kind of talk about the Zen Center. We should make some jokes at it. You know, I think a lot of them aren't entirely appropriate. But I do feel like it gets to be sort of a group identity to do that kind of thing, and people have a lot of fun with it. And also, I think it does tend to perhaps detract from looking more at what's happening here To me, it was troubling at the annual meeting to learn that the membership of this organization is only about 211 people, I think they said, and that there are really not very many new people. Most of the people are the old people who came from the Zen Center, and a lot of the new people who came since then have not stayed, they've left. And I think it would be very, very constructive for people in this group to look carefully at why are people not, some of the new people who have come and gone, why have they left, and why is not, why isn't the membership growing, and that kind of thing, because it seems to me there must be reasons for that. And do we really know what those reasons are, and are we looking carefully at those things? And I guess from the discussions I've heard in this group, I'm not sure that we are.
Isn't it more relevant to ask ourselves why we're here? I mean,
I didn't hear you.
isn't it more relevant to ask ourselves why we're here? Whether people come and go really, should have nothing to do with it. If anybody is here for a really deep concern, that's all that matters. And maybe only 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 people have those particular concerns.
Well,
You can't please everybody.
the reasons why people left the Zen Center were often reasons that were very troubling to them. I don't think anybody would leave this group with anywhere near the kind of trauma that people left the Zen Center. But I do think that a lot of people, that possibly some people, would have gone through quite a struggle with, whether or not to stay here. But maybe it wasn't a casual dropping away. I don't know. The reason I'm asking is because I'm not sure that I'm going to stay here, and it's a very hard struggle for me.
So are you trying to reassure yourself that you're not the only one? Is there that going on for you? Sometimes I feel it's really strange to be sitting in this, or at a discussion group and there's only a few people, and then I try to look at and see why I need the reassurance of great numbers of people to do what I'm doing. For some reason, it is reassuring or makes you feel like this is the place to be.
It's where it's at.
Yeah. But it really only makes a difference in terms maybe of whether we can afford payments and stuff like that in a practical sense. In a way, it's really nice. It's very intimate and cozy, and it's very nice to do things in small numbers. But I think it's really easy to get hung up on, because I do from time to time.
Yeah, I think that's valid. And one of the things I have done in the last couple of weeks since I've been struggling with this thing is I have talked with people and have really looked for support for my position, basically.
It seems like the two comments you just made are somehow connected. Your first one about the Zen Center, maybe you have some criticisms about this group that you're dealing with and trying to repress and stifle because it seems you don't want to be that type of person who goes around, but you do have some real concerns you're trying to deal with, but without hurting or, being negative. Maybe you are dealing with the same issues that people have dealt with at the Zen Center. I don't know.
I think the issues I'm trying to deal with, I've been bringing out in the open quite a lot and talking with people.
It may not be a terribly great concern whether there are large numbers of people coming here, but on the other hand, this place was set up to allow people to come and do something. I probably hesitate to say what that is, but if there's a feeling that it's preventing people from doing whatever that something is, then that would be a concern. People are having to leave because they can't do whatever they came here to do, assuming whatever they came here to do was what
was appropriate for what this place was set up for.
Whatever, yeah. I mean, that's a big discussion. Then that would be a concern.
I guess that's the question I have as a visitor. moment, it sounds like group therapy rather than a spiritual kind of quest. And I'm kind of interested in learning about saying, how do you deal with feelings in the Zen approach? How do you deal with the past? That's what you're talking about. Some people are carrying big chunks of the past here. How do you deal with that? These are questions.
Maybe you can need to ask those questions. And perhaps the reason we're all sitting around talking is it's become maybe important for us to verbalize those things to each other, to ask those questions.
I'm not sure the place was organized to provide instruction in those matters or to offer a Zen approach to dealing with feelings of the past. It's not, one wouldn't think it was inconducive to inquiring about those things.
That's actually what we're doing right here is we're actually trying to do that. We're dealing with feelings that are with past, things from the past. I mean, isn't this one of the reasons we agreed to have discussion groups is because we feel discussion does help with understanding some of those things.
This seems more like group therapy to you than like, quote unquote, a Zen experience. Something. Did you ask that?
Yeah. I'm not familiar with Zen, so I'm trying to find out what it is. But it does seem like group therapy to me. My understanding of other spiritual disciplines is that the particular place of immediate feeling is very central to the whole issue. But does it become then the central issue?
Could you repeat what you just said? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear it over here.
I guess I was saying that, for me, one of the important questions about a spiritual quest that makes it different than psychological is how you deal with immediate feelings that people have, your own self. And I'm just interested in your point of view regarding that, because this is what I hear is a lot of immediate feelings that have to do with the past, feelings about the past.
What is the difference between a spiritual quest and a psychological quest?
Or how do these two different approaches deal with you? Yeah. Well, how would you say?
I'm here to listen and learn.
I know, I just, a friend who was going to Sesshin at the Zen Center just came and stayed with us Friday night. I hadn't seen him for a long time. He'd worked with Toni for a while and he's still at the Zen Center. And we were talking about the two schools, so to speak. And one of the things I told him was, we were talking about whether we could both work freely at both places, or what the difference was. And I don't know if this helps you at all, but one of the things I said was that whenever I worked there, I felt like it was very difficult for me to bring in my daily life problems, which to me were the most important part of my practice, especially as a housewife and a mother, where I wasn't able to go to a lot of retreats and a lot of sitting and put in a lot of time. But that every time I tried to do it, every time I tried to bring out questions from my daily life, I was supposed to hit it over the head with a koan, and it didn't work for me. For him, that works really well. He just works in that way on his practice and doesn't very often have a need for bringing in daily life things. Somehow they get dispelled in the process of working. I don't know if that's a difference at all in emphasis or what, but it's just seems like for the two people who were talking that night, it seemed like a valid distinction between ways of working. And sometimes it does seem maybe a little group therapy-ish, but I haven't done enough of that, but I really have a sense that, there's somehow a different level to it if you're both practicing and asking those questions at the same time and trying to be open and attentive in your whole life and not just distinguish between the mat, sitting on the mat, and the rest of your life, but if there's real incorporation, whatever.
I notice myself when talking to someone I just met or so, saying I'm in Genesee Valley Zen Center, I usually explain or tell them that this new center, we don't have chanting. I tell the the things we don't do. We don't have chanting, don't have the robes and all those kinds of things, the more Japanese type of things. We basically just have the meditation and the retreats and talks with the teacher and sittings. And it seems to me that why I tell them what we don't do is show that what I'm doing is not weird. That it's, this thing that I'm doing is more of an American type of Zen practice.
Well, maybe it's a way of communicating with the person, so...
Yeah, I'm communicating that, but I notice also some
I
motives there underneath that, I'm into this thing, but you don't have to look at me that I'm too weird because, we don't do all those other kinds of things. I don't know how to work with that. And sometimes certain people at work, I don't tell them I'm into Zen practice. Sometimes feel, when you're locked into a job, certain maybe, the way I'd put it, closed-minded or very conservative people, it might be very uncomfortable to work with them if they have an idea that you're into something that's, real strange or something. I'm still, I've been in this for some years, I don't know how to work with it.
Are you clear for yourself what you're doing? I mean, when you say Zen practice, do you yourself feel you know what you're doing?
Sitting and looking into myself, trying to understand. The sitting is a lot less compulsive than it was before. I just have to sit 45 minutes, an hour or something in the morning and night. Now, if I sit 10 or 15 minutes and it's kind of late, and that's okay. But I just feel, now I feel it's more part of my life, and that just kind of need to do it. I find it very helpful at times, understanding what's going on. Sometimes the understanding is not intellectual, but I feel after sitting sometimes more comfortable feeling with what's going on in the life or something like that, or a calmer kind of feeling. But then at other times it's not so calm.
I think the question about, what is this place about, and, do we do a lot of group therapy, and what is the difference between that and Zen? This, what's going on now is something that we do, and it maybe does have some similarities to group therapy. And I think it has just evolved as, something that, that we're experimenting, and that we find, there's a place for it. And I think it promotes sharing, between us, and, learning more about people, and I think it helps bring us, closer together. And but this isn't the only thing that goes on here either. There are the regular, sittings and meetings and retreats, and this is just one part of it.
I think, for me, the difference between what has the potential of happening here and maybe what we think of as group therapy is maybe it's the degree that we're willing to really go into something. Doesn't necessarily happen all the time. Maybe it's never really happened to the degree we could take something. My own experience lately has been that we, maybe this is just the way the mind works, but we tend to bounce around from different things. Somebody brings a question up, and then somebody else, before that's even responded to, brings something else in, and pretty soon we're just sort of going in circles, which is just the way the mind sort of does. It just goes. But to even take anything that somebody really feels an urgency about, and to just, if we were able to just really go into that, that to me would be some difference between an approach, if we want to call it that, that is possible here, that may be different than what goes on, I don't know.
For me, I think it's more a matter of direction than degree. And I've been in group therapy, and I was in therapy for a number of years, and I know you can go into a great deal of depth, digging into the past and figuring out your history.
That's not what I mean by depth.
Well, it's depth too. I mean, that's you can spend a lot of energy on that, and I thought a lot about what's the difference between working here and working with a therapist, and I think what I see, I think, is that it's one thing I find that comes up is if a certain feeling comes up, I have this sort of innate habitual tendency to figure it out, which is sort of what I did in therapy. What happened when I was a little boy that this comes up now, or why does this always come up, this kind of thing, and an unwillingness just to really be with what's happening right as it's happening without needing to identify it or relate it to something else or come to some conclusion about this type of personality I am because this is coming up. But and then when it's not so immediate, to let it go and look up and see the sky that's there instead of well, I haven't quite figured it out yet. I got to stick with it. And this is something that it kind of brings me around too to the point Marge made, the difference between working through feelings that come up because of the history of this group or because of the history that individuals have, having been at the Zen Center. Something comes up, to be willing to look at it and to be open about that, as opposed to making this part of our identity, where talking about the Zen Center or talking about sort of identifying ourselves in reaction to another place becomes important or becomes comfortable or something like that. Then it seems that we're not. But for me, sometimes I've had this feeling too, this sort of uneasiness when talk about the Zen Center goes in a certain direction, because it feels like we're not really paying much attention. Or for myself anyway, I feel that it's easy to get a jibe in.
It's really important to have some feeling of how one needs to work, what Mary was talking about before, certainly was my experience, and I've talked to a number of other people who have had the same experience, and it created not dealing with feelings and memories as they come up, and also just what's going on in your daily life. Just for some people creates a practice that feels extraordinarily abstract and dry.
So what creates abstract and not dealing with that? Or what creates abstract and
not dealing with it? And to to examine these feelings as they come up, as Matt said, as well as, and even as you're examining them, having an awareness of the wind, having an awareness of the sky. sky. What is it? I mean, I can't really say what it is. But it's a way of working, and but we don't need to say, I don't need to say, I need to work this way because this way is bad. All I need to say is this is the way I need to work, and go ahead and do it.
That doesn't prevent observation.
But what are you observing? I mean, if all we're observing is, it doesn't, it does not exactly, it does not present observation of one's own memory and the effect that they are having in one's life. Does not prevent that at all.
It doesn't prevent observation of things that happen around you, of violence or repression, or it doesn't prevent that.
There's a difference between observing one's memory and the effect that it's having on observing memories as they come up, and the effect that it has on us now, and talking about past memories.
Sounds like I hear some defending of something. Someone's sharing some views or whatever. I hear a defense of.
I can't hear you.
I hear some views being explained, and then someone defending something or objecting to it. Some openness is being lost by defending or.
John, when you talk about memory, what do you mean? Like, what you just said, could you sort of go into that a little bit?
It's tough to do that without being specific. I have a very bad memory, or quote unquote, I have a memory of a meeting with Capello Roche in which some things were said, and the effect on me was to feel an incredible need to behave in a certain way. Now, I can sit back and say that guy's a shithead for making me go through that, or I can say this is how, or can I see this wanting to be and wanting to behave in a certain way and actually see it going on and wanting to appear in a certain way. And the one thing seems to have enormous value and the other doesn't seem to have any value at all.
The one there's an immediacy in the one, and the other is just the actual memory of the incident.
Isn't it possible to see the whole situation too? I mean, maybe see him?
But is he seeing him at the moment? What you're saying is that's just the old stuff, that's the memory.
I'm seeing
the immediacy is the behavior that's actually right now.
The behavior that's going on, the acting in a certain way, the wanting to be in a certain way, the wanting to appear in a certain way.
So in a sense, the memory is almost secondary, if not...
No, the memory is part of the whole process. I wouldn't call it secondary.
Well, in the sense of what's going on, the behavior that's going on right now, where it came from, who's, I mean, it seems to me that at least the little I know of analysis and all that is, taking things back, this happened between your mother and then that person, and, where do you begin or end with that, really? And it just seems that, although like you say, a specific incident may have come up, it just seems that they would have further limited value in the sense of dealing with or not dealing with it, or just working with what you're pointing to is certain behavior that's happening.
I can't speak as one who is here very much, unfortunately, but one of the things I do on a day-to-day basis is work with the stuff of how the past affects behavior in the present. And as I listen to the discussion, what comes to my mind is the degree to which things from the past may not be in awareness and may then affect what happens in terms of the immediate feeling that arises in a situation. The only real value that I see of looking to the past is in bringing to awareness those things that happen and do impact the present. And when that awareness is there, then that influence can be put aside.
But there are ways of bringing that up and ways of bringing that up that it may not do to say that it's no good to talk about memories. The question is, what is the talking for, or what does it do? And it seems very conducive to not dealing with the effect of the memory, or not, dealing is a good word. But it seems that the more crucial point is, what is that memory doing right now?
Well, that's
And-
what John was saying.
Yeah, and one can talk about it as a way of
Keeping yourself
essentially
aware.
saying what a shithead
Yeah.
this is, and that doesn't do anything
Right,
about what
exactly.
this is memory doing, except that it expands the circle of what the memory is doing for more people to handle.
But if you, what John was saying, if I heard it right, if you see your need to conform, to follow, to act in certain ways, that continues, no matter where you find yourself. And to see that, have insight into that is the crucial thing,
But
not
when-
what brought it about.
Yes, but nonetheless, the discussion, it seems to me, is not necessarily contrary to that insight. It doesn't necessarily make that insight. I mean, it could be conducive.
I don't understand what you said.
Well, there seemed to be a distinction being made between dealing with the situation, looking into the effect of this memory oneself, quietly, perhaps by oneself, and actually talking about that to someone else. It may be that the talking is helpful at certain times.
When is it helpful? What is help in this?
When is it helpful? Just whenever it's helpful.
What is helpful? What do you mean by that?
When it's a
What
looking
is
into,
help?
I think, Tony, when it's a looking into,
Yeah.
when they're talking, it's a looking into, then
As
it's
someone separate from all this, who analyzes it, who judges it, and so forth, but to see that this is happening. I want to be somebody. I want to have a certain behavior, so I'm approved of by people who seem important. To see that in action now, maybe the memory opened up this thing, but to dwell on the memory or to talk about that leads nowhere. But to see what is happening now may be the breakup of that pattern.
What if when you talk about the memory, someone suggests to you what you're doing? That in fact, this discussion is not helpful, or not, leads nowhere. That there may be a tendency, as you say, to attempt to behave in certain ways that will be approved by people in authority or that will be disapproved. Could that not happen during a discussion as well
You
as...
have to look. You have to look. Of course it can happen. It can happen anytime. You cannot, just because you see something once, you cannot depend on now you're going to see this forever. You have to look and observe. By observation, I don't mean evaluating it or, but to see directly. What are we doing? Do I want to be somebody again in this group? Somebody of importance or projecting a certain behavior. But I'm just taking what he was taking as an example. And at the same time, not so enclosed in that everything else around them is sort of lost. In other words, a limited attention. Which is not really attention, it's limited, it's focusing on something to the exclusion of everything else. Sally, it seems like you feel that that within the structure of the Zen Center there's something inherently evil or wrong there. That, or like, let's say any institution like even the U.S. government or whatever, you want to say, that because it exists that and that you see that something there makes you feel uncomfortable and you don't go along with it, that and why can't all these other people see what you see, or that this organization, the way it is, doesn't give people the room to be themselves? But the question is that, I mean, it's relative to what you see and what these other people see, no matter what organization it is. It's entirely relative, because if you see it and they don't, or who's seeing what, what difference does it make? They're there because they're there, and they can always leave or change things at any point, in any second, any moment. It's just where they're at that particular time, because I don't feel that it's Toni who broke up from this group. I feel it's all of us, who are here now. It's just not one person, and that we're following the leader. I mean, I hate to think that that was true. That would be a complete bummer. It would be just a replication of the thing all over again. And it's like, as John was saying, how can you, he's saying, it was up to me. It was up to me to see what went on, even though I didn't see it then, I see it now, what went on. And so you can't call the shots for a group of people or another group of people.
No, and I don't think that I don't feel like I said pretty much anything of what maybe you thought I said.
Okay, once.
And my concern is that as seems to happen a lot, having read about a lot of things that have gone on that are not at a lot of different spiritual organizations, that it's very easy for a certain pattern to be set up. An organization can hook into our need to be told what to do and how to behave and how to live. Mm-hmm. And if you question the organization, that's your ego. Mm-hmm. And I think that's I'm not saying that's exactly what happened. I'm not being specific. I'm saying in general, in observing this, and it's been documented a lot. Mm-hmm. By people who've worked in a lot of different spiritual organizations, that type of thing is very common, and I think it's extremely dangerous, because yes, we want Daddy to tell us how to behave. We want somebody to set it up for us so we don't have to stand on our own 2 feet and look. But organizations can exploit that so easily, or systems, or
it's
people,
not organizations,
people.
It's people.
Exist
It's people, and that's what's so damn crucial, and that's what we have to watch for ourselves.
Right.
Not watch what another group's doing.
Well,
watch what we do to ourselves.
Yeah, but can't I look and see? Yeah, this is what goes on. This is what goes on amongst people when they set up these. Can go on very easily when they set up these kinds of structures. And it's a danger. Let's look and see, is that going on here? How does it function? Why is it there? Because it does function, and it is dangerous. Because then, I'm being told how to behave. There's no looking at what's going on here. There's this real schizophrenic state set up, which sets up enormous depression, enormous tension. People, it has lots of pretty extreme effects if you look. And I'm concerned about the fact that freedom to look, be there or not be there, and that that it not get into this thing of like, you know, it's my ego and I have to kind of, well, I just think that's a very easy rationalization that can get made. And it really gets in the way of just clearly perceiving what is going on, the dynamics of the situation. And the situation is not, is both inside and out. There's nothing in between that.
At the same time, when you ask people to get involved democratically in the development and maintenance of an organization, which is what I gather you're doing here, inevitably, the major vehicle by which that is done is through the expression of feelings. And what is more a direct expression of the ego but our own individual feelings? And I was fascinated to hear the question of, they have to come out, but what do you do with them is the issue. And to maintain your spiritual vision, it seems to me, is a very difficult task in that.
Is there, I don't really, I guess, understand this spiritual vision. It's like, if I'm really clear about why I'm here, which maybe, I don't know anything specific about that. It's very hard to verbalize. See, as soon as I set myself up something that, a goal or a result, then I'm no longer really aware of who I am in this moment. And a spiritual vision, it seems to me, maybe is a projection, a goal, or a result that will be attained. And if I really stand on my own two feet, if I really question what I'm doing at any given moment, if I'm really willing to look at that, openly, which means in relationships, everything that goes on, my reactions to people, my needs, my wants, my fears, all of that stuff. And maybe if it's possible to look at that without wanting any results, without wanting to get anywhere, that it's really possible to just be what I am, without really necessarily knowing or even needing to know what that is, because I'm not sure it is possible to know that in the sense of intellect and all that stuff. And so, in that sense, everything else is just totally irrelevant, whether it's Zen or therapy, And if there's a real attention to that, the past isn't even there. And if it comes up, it can be looked at. Maybe with some freedom every now and then. So I'm not sure the result or the vision or anything like that is really very important. But it's that real question, looking and seeing if it's possible to really live in this moment, to respond to people openly without being a prisoner. This person, this being, this psychological and spiritual, whatever you want to call it, entity that we carry around with us and think is concrete and real. So that it might be real actuality.
I'd like to say something here too. I don't like the idea of this split between psychological, spiritual, or physical for that matter. And I think in this quest, or the spiritual quest we have here, I hope we are working towards a wholeness. and a seeing a wholeness. And I think the psychological and the physical belongs to that spiritual quest just every bit as much as what you call a spiritual quest. It's all there and all one. And so it all has to be worked through.
Psychology means study of the mind, but there's a lot of theories, and so usually the theory is before the person, or before, in between you and the mind is the theory of how you work. A lot of times in psychology, but I don't know if you have any theories about
Not if you do too much sitting.
yeah.
You know, for a long time, I really felt that this was a very conceptual thing. I really felt that feelings were deeper and more profound and closer to the truth than thought. And, you know, if you could just really hook into these feelings. But now there's like, I can see a flow to them, just like thoughts are. And I think maybe that's a distinction, I don't know, between group therapy and what we're doing here is just not to be kind of taken in or fooled by that sense that these feelings have a permanence to them. And the whole thing of that, you know, time and what's the past and what's the present and whether a memory, because it's from the past, it doesn't matter when it happened. If even the residue is there and it's being worked with and you're really looking at something at that moment, then that distinction that it happened many years ago, whatever, doesn't matter anymore. So that's another that I remember from a long feeling, and you know, like, wow, these feelings are really, really there.
Thinking that these feelings are
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
the question, what do we mean by feeling? I mean, it seems to me we're not talking about the sense of pure sensory experience, but what do we mean by?
Yeah, similar thought to that. A sense that whatever crisis or thing was going on in my life and was absorbing a lot of my attention and thought, and a real sense of holding on to that and not being able to let it go when the time came and to sort of, and it's very much connected with thoughts. You can't distinguish between. Yeah, it's so hard to say it because what I want to say is something like, I don't know, it's just a slightly different sense of time and how thoughts and feelings work with thoughts and understand with thoughts. And, don't really have anything abiding, even though at the moment they feel like they're making certain things going on. I mean, in the sense that, oh, the time is done.
Thinking about it, to make it